Hi there, welcome to this series, Can God Help with Trauma? This is the part of the website where I'm unpacking trauma. Now, trauma is a very big label to cover situations in our lives that really impact us very, very negatively. I talked in this first video about headings, if you like, of deprivation, which is not having what you should have, and abuse, which is having what you shouldn't have. And I want to talk first of all about abandonment and rejection. Now, I think that abandonment and rejection is often the real things that impact us deeply, that are really embedded in our psyche. When this happens historically very early on in our family, it can have a dreadful effect on the way that we feel, the way that we see life, the way that we see relationships. And one of those deepest is if we were not planned. And I always ask this when I'm in my counselling room, because I've discovered as I work with people that weren't planned, that they have what I've come to call guilt for being, just a real sense in their life that they're wrong. And it's very hard for them to put their finger on it, but I do perceive that they're up for any guilt in a 200-mile radius. They're absolutely sure they're to blame for all sorts of things, and it's because they carry around this chronic feeling of not being right. It can also happen, I think, when a parent maybe has got 3 girls and is longing for a boy, but gets a 4th boy, and it is amazing, it's intriguing, and I'm always constantly amazed at how we pick up these things. And when we're little, we can't think them in our head, so we feel them in our bodies as almost a cellular reaction. And I've worked with this, of course, and a therapeutic relationship is really helpful. If you feel that you've had a lot of rejection and abandonment in your early years, because what the therapist does is begins to build a relationship of respect and care, and unconditional regard, I think they call it, but builds a therapeutic relationship where you can begin to look at your pain, and it can be very intense. And we're talking here about God. Can God help in this sort of deep rejection and trauma? And yes, he can. And remember, I don't know if you looked at all of these videos, but one of the images that is really clear in the Bible is his parent heart. And most of us somewhere have experienced some love where we've been at the receiving end of people that really care for us. And God, that's just a tiny micro model of God's heart. And so when I'm working with people and just holding them safe as that pain begins to come up, then learning to sit in the presence of God, which is love, and learning that they are loved deep inside. Now, we can't get back there, but God, because he is outside of time, can go back into our past. And I can't really tell you kind of I've seen it happen over and over again. It's quite hard to explain on a video, but there is a sense in which the trauma, it's as if Jesus goes back and visits that traumatic situation. And when it really works and the client really connects with this, it changes how they feel, because love has arrived. Now, it might sound crazy to you, and if you've not come across people saying this before, I really understand that. But nevertheless, it says in the Bible, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I have discovered and worked with people who will tell you this, that the presence of God can go back and come in that place of real heartache and pain. Now, the trick is not getting God down there, because he always wants to come. Often the real thing in this sort of issue is your person you're working with, who might be you, really being safe enough to begin to open up. Let me in, let God in. So can God help with abandonment and rejection? Absolutely he can, and he will. Interesting enough, when I'm working with this, and I often use the model of maybe a dog or a cat, because some of my clients who've known the deepest woundings, they're not brilliant at relationships. And if you have not been taught what love is really about, what you hope in your environment, if you love your kids, that if something goes on, you kind of sift with them and you say, well, that's good, that isn't good. As a parent, if you misbehave, and you shout at your kids, it's good to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shouted at you. That's my issue, that's not yours. And so a child learns to sift between what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, what they should put up with and what they shouldn't. That's called a boundary. So if you grow up in a healthy environment, you recognize what a boundary is. If you grow up in a toxic environment where there isn't enough love, or you feel rejected or not wanted, then those alarm signals are not in there. And so they often end up in relationships that are not very good, because the bit inside that should say, really, that's not a good thing, you don't have to put up with that, you walk away from that, that doesn't go off. And so often they find themselves in really hurting relationships. So what often happens is they end up with a dog or a cat, and they love their animals so, so much, and they feel that their animals are safe. And a cat can be so incredibly therapeutic. And so to explain how God feels about them in this state of abandonment and rejection, I often say, if you were going to have another dog and you went to a rescue centre and you went up there and all these dogs, and then there was one in the corner kind of trembling a bit, looking really, really sad. And so you say, maybe to the RSPCA, that's the rescue centre here in the UK, you ask about the dog, and you get told that dog's really just come in and really been very badly treated. And often my client will say at this point, and I say, how would you feel? And the client would say, I just want to give it a home. I want to take it home and I want to love it. Their heart just goes out to this distressed animal. And so much more, God feels like that about you. And if you are really struggling with abandonment and rejection, then God's heart is deeply, deeply touched about this. It matters to him that you've not had enough love, because he wants you to have love. So I do my best to love my clients. I don't know if some therapists might disagree with that, but that's the way I operate. I really care for my clients, but I can't always be there. I can be there in the therapeutic hour that we have, but God can be with you. He can come with you. He can be with you in your darkest bits in the night. He can be with you. And so what begins to happen is you begin to open up your heart, and your heart thaws out. Now, I'm sure, back into my picture about the RSPCA, that if they did decide to adopt the dog would not immediately go into waggy tail, oh, that's absolutely wonderful. They take the dog home, the dog would probably find a safe corner, not want anybody near them. And so what that person would probably do is very gently feed them, maybe give them a bowl, very, very gently approach the dog until the dog feels safe. And then when the dog feels safe, then they can really begin to give it cuddles and take it for walks. So there is that bit in us when people come near us, and even when God comes near us, if he's been misrepresented in your life, where we think, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure, I cannot cope with anybody else letting me down, I'm not sure I want to let anybody in, I have been completely shattered. And God really understands that bit. He really, really does. And I kind of have this tuned in thing now when I work with clients to the heart of God, and the tenderness and the patient loving of the heart of God for people that have been really deeply rejected and abandoned. I know with all my heart that it really matters to God, and his heart is touched and broken by the way that you have been treated. And so, can he help? Yes, he can. Does he care? Yes, he can. He does. Can he come and help me? Yes, he will. But give him time. I say this a lot on this website. Nothing is instant. Our pain is rarely instant, and our recovery does take time. And so he will gently approach you. He'll reveal a little bit of himself at a time until you're safe enough to really let him in. And often when I'm working with clients when there's been a great deal of pain, I'm holding them safe and helping them to begin to open up, to let their heart take a risk again to be cared for and to be loved. And the other thing I would say, that I'm sure, to get back to the image of the dog, the one thing that the new owner would do was to really plan for that dog to have a wonderful life. And that would be in their plan. And, you sometimes see these films, don't you, where there's the dog 3 or 4 years later is bounding around, had puppies, and how much more would a God who loves you completely want that for you? So he doesn't just want to heal you, he wants to bless you, he wants to make you whole, and he wants to give you a good life. That is his heart for you. I've been a mum. I love my children. I want the very, very, very best for them. And so he wants that for you. So if you are listening to this and you've really felt a lot in your life that you've been rejected and abandoned, first of all, I would say that really, really matters. And I am so distressed for you, because I do understand the deepness of that pain. Do perhaps go and get some counselling help, because that will undoubtedly help you on your journey. But go find a church, go find a loving church. Right? Not all churches have got a good community, but you will know it if you go in, you'll sense it. They might be doing some slightly wacky things. It is, when you first go to a church, a little bit like watching a football match when you can't see the ball, because everybody seems to be having a wonderful time and you know, if you like, cheering God, and you don't know what's going on. But you do get to know why that is happening, and you do begin to understand. And the whole purpose of community in God's kingdom is that we love and care for each other. And if many of your wounds have come relationally, one of the most powerful ways of getting those wounds healed is to come into loving relationship with other Christians. If other Christians have hurt you, then I'm deeply sorry about that. But we are learning. We are getting better. We are beginning to understand things like emotional literacy and psychological literacy. We're on a journey with this. But one thing I can say is that Christians on the whole really, really do care. They might be slightly inept in the way they show that care sometimes, but really they do care. They want to learn to care. They want to grow in their capacity to love. And so do find a church. And I do say this again quite a lot in these videos, because particularly where there's been trauma and wound, a loving family is one of the best places to heal, and a good church is a loving family. So I'm banging on about this because if you've been abandoned, the last thing you need is just to try and do this by yourself, in a room by yourself, just still feeling abandoned. That really is not going to be very helpful. So thank you for listening. In the next video, I'm going to be unpacking this a bit more, just talking about deprivation in general, and then I will do one on abuse. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.